Please help me welcome the Dean of the School of Management, Dr. Gerhard Appelfeller.
Thank you, Mary Jo. How lovely to see such a wonderful audience of young people and younger people tonight at our Reconnections event. On behalf of University Village and California Lutheran University School of Management, I would like to say a warm welcome and thank you all for being here tonight. Let me tell you a little anecdote of one of my most recent travels back home to Austria and Europe. On my way here, I picked up a local newspaper and read a short article about a software company in Vienna, Austria, that had just made the decision to discontinue their email system because it got too expensive for them to train their new young employees on old technology. So that's where we're at. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about generations, and that little anecdote tells us a lot about the stereotypes that we probably are dealing with inside and outside of the workplace every day, stereotypes that younger generations have about older generations and vice versa. And for some of you who are regular readers of the Time magazine, you probably remember this one of a few weeks ago that says, the me generation. Millennials are lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. And that's why it will save us all. And I think that's what it's about. Let's do away with the stereotypes. Let's find a way to make this world a better place together by leveraging, by capitalizing on the good things that other generations can do. I would like to thank our sponsors for the event tonight, which are the California Strawberry Commission, the Dolce Foundation, represented by Brent Lucy, I don't know if he's here tonight, and University Village, of course, particularly Sharon Houselog and Christy Ferguson for their help in planning and organizing this event. Thank you very much. And I would also like to introduce our facilitator for tonight, Andrea Gallagher. Andrea Gallagher is the president of Senior Concerns, a local nonprofit that serves seniors and their family caregivers. She's a certified senior advisor and founder of Rethinking Your Future. Andrea served as past president of the Life Planning Network, a national community of professionals who support individuals to successfully plan for and navigate the second half of life. I guess I'm her, so I'll call you. She's editor and co-author of the book Life Smart of the 50. Andrea writes bi-monthly newsletter paper columns for the Acorn called The Other Side of 50 and is a national speaker on topics related to life planning, positive aging, and boomer transition. I wish you all an enjoyable event tonight and lots of energy and good discussions, and floor is yours now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you hear me all? Okay? Wonderful. This will be an evening of insights, of interests, of stories, of experiences, and I hope that all of us, whatever generation, take something away from this. So let me see if I can extricate this for a minute. There we go. Okay, great. What I'd like to do is introduce our four panelists this evening, and I'd like to start with Peg Lane. And Peg, if you'd like to make your way up there, I'll talk about you as you're going. Peg was born in the silent generation. She was born between 1925 and 1942. And to her deference, and everybody on the panel, we won't say their exact birth date, Peg's been in the healthcare field for over 50 years. You know, it's funny, I have to tell you, as I'm reading these bios, I'm realizing that Peg has the longest bio, and then it goes down from there. So I'm guessing it's all that life experience that we can talk about for a moment. There you go. She earned her RNBA in liberal arts and her MS, MSN in healthcare administration. Throughout her professional career, she's maintained an active interest in the promotion of adequate healthcare delivery. Her background has included staff development, public school teaching, nursing education, clinical supervision, case management, quality management, risk management, and she serves as Vice President of Patient Care Services. She served. Presently, Peg works as a consultant to hospitals in the quality field and regulatory areas. She is an active volunteer. Are you ready for the list? She volunteers with the Thousand Oaks Civic Arts Center for Senior Concerns, as she's an angel for Casa Pacifica. She volunteers for Life Animal Rescue, St. Jude's Church. She feeds the homeless, and she works at the Discovery Center in Thousand Oaks. Goodness, do you have time to be here tonight? Okay, we welcome Peg Lane. Okay, next, representing the baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964, is Tim Coster. Tim, you want to come on up? Thank you. Tim began his career as an economic development planner for the Minneapolis Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And then he became the aging planner, responsible for the development of senior centers in the Twin Cities. In 1984, he moved to Southern California, and in 1989, he founded Search Systems, an organization that conducts research. His partner and financial guru in this business is his wife, Prudence. In 2002, this is really interesting, Tim reconnected with Karen Manners-Smith, an old friend from Boston. They got to talking about their experiences in the 60s. Do you remember them? It's all the drug experimentation, I'm just wondering. And decided that college students today needed to have a better understanding of what it was like to live through the tumultuous period of the 60s. So together they put together 27 memoirs. Things from what it's like to land a helicopter in the middle of a firefight in Vietnam, to working with Cesar Chavez, to being fired upon at Kent State, to living in a commune, or camping out in the rain at Woodstock. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Coster. His book in particular, he was holding up for a minute, but it's called Time It Was, American Stories for the 60s. Okay, representing the Generation X, Michelle Francisco, born between 1961 and 81. Michelle Francisco has worked for WellPoint for 14 years and is currently a Senior Product Management Director. She graduated in May from CLU, woohoo, with a master's in small business / entrepreneurship and sustainability. Holy cow, you are our future. She also graduated with honors. Michelle has conducted several projects regarding generations in the workplace and has experience with managing and being managed by both older and younger employees. This will be interesting to talk to you. She was also asked to participate in CLU's School of Management Festival of Scholars based upon her research on this subject. Welcome, Michelle. And representing the millennial generation, Spencer Marcus. Born between 1982 and 2005. Ah, the babe in the woods. Spencer is a recent graduate of CLU. Congratulations, Spencer. He's currently working as a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch in Pasadena. Hey, good news, he has a job. Spencer is one of the youngest financial advisors at the company and routinely works with team members and clients from many different generations. Welcome, Spencer. Please have a seat, panelists. We will have opportunity later on for the audience to ask some questions of the panelists. Okay, this is a question for everyone, so whoever wants to start can start, and Mary Jo's going to help with the microphone so everybody knows where to go there. It seems like every generation has a few moments when everyone can look back and say, I remember where I was when this happened. These events oftentimes have lasting effects on generations and how they see the world. So could you share one of those experiences with us? And the second part of that question is, how do you think it shaped your generation? Anybody would like to start? Okay.
Does this work? Oh, okay, cool. I definitely think the moment that we can look back on was a bit alluded to in the montage, and I think that has to be 9/11. And I'm going to answer that with how it shaped our generation. And I think for me and the people near my age, it was because the more specific age I was at, I believe I was 12 at the time and in 6th grade. So it was really the moment when you kind of understand that you're more outside the bubble than you thought you were in. It's not just, in my case, Abraham Lincoln Elementary. It's not just the town of Simi Valley. There's way more out there. There's other countries. There's other different races, different ethnicities. All different kind of things are out there, and it was really an eye-opener for my age and my generation to look at the world as a whole, and not just live in the bubble of 6th grade and Abraham Lincoln Elementary in that case. So I definitely think 9/11 is the answer to that question.
I think it changed all our lives, but definitely yours. Yes.
I'll just take the next one. Is honestly, I remember literally coming home and watching the launch of MTV. And I loved my Atari. I actually had Pong before Atari. And I remember that little button and holding it down into my thumb really was had a callus on it. So that first introduction to technology of actually being able to play a game at your home versus having to go to the arcade. Yes, I had to go to the arcade and put in quarters. And I explained this to my kids that I actually had 3 lives for each quarter, and I had to go spend my money, and that was it. I couldn't hit reset and start the game over again. So those were the first things of all the technology and gaming and everything else that you see today. So that was a big one for me.
Well, the one incident that everyone in my generation remembers more than anything is the death of John F. Kennedy, and it changed us forever. It's a loss of hope more than anything. But for me personally, I think it was the draft lottery in 1969. Vietnam War had a tremendous impact on the country and basically split it in half. Half the country was pro-war, half the country was anti-war. And if you were anti-war, the people who were pro-war thought that you were anti-American. So it was America, love it or leave it. You were either for the country or against the country. If you were for the war, you were for the country. If you're against the war, you were against the country. And everything about the draft and the Vietnam War impacted every part of our lives. It's a terrifying thing. None of us knew if we were going to go, when we were going to go, and what was going to happen. And so many of us lost good friends there. And then when the draft lottery came out, at least you knew what your position was. If you're, it affected a number of years. It wasn't just a single year. Everybody went into the same draft lottery. So if you got a number that was 165 or more, it was a good chance you wouldn't get drafted, no matter when you were eligible. If it was less than 165, there was a good chance you were going to Vietnam. I got number 1. So you can imagine the impact that had on me, and I was eligible for the draft at the time. So that's the one thing more than anything else that I remember. There were so many other events. I mean, the death of Martin Luther King, the death of Robert F. Kennedy, the landing on the moon, all of those.
Well, I'm going to go back a few years, and the thing that really affected, I really feel, our generation is the fact that they bombed Hawaii. And when we had the planes come in and bomb our ships in Hawaii, all the fears that we had as children were, they're going to come and get us. And there were things that we had to do throughout those years that we were rationing things. We were doing everything that we could here in the United States, except that we never thought anybody could come and touch us here. And we used to have the air raid sirens going off and all those things. And now all of a sudden, they've gone and they hit Hawaii. So I think those were some of the things that really started to give us some trepidation at that point in time.
I think it's interesting as you all talk, and Michelle, I love that yours was a positive, uplifting experience, but I think often it's that loss of innocence experience that causes, that's the thing that's sort of indelibly etched in our brain. The one thing I can say, having been to 9/11 site and having been to the Vietnam Memorial and having been to Pearl Harbor, to the memorial there, is that most of those, or every one of those, does kind of an amazing job of bringing back the emotion and the feelings and the what it felt like at that moment for the people that were involved in it, for the people whose lives were touched. And so I would say that if there's nothing else that you do, if you're a young person and you have a chance to experience some of those places, while it is a tragedy, it is a tremendous learning experience for us as a society, as a human society. And so anyway, I think that it's those moments that really cause us to think about who we are, what's important to us, what we care about. So thank you for that. Here's the next one. And I'm going to address this one to Peg. In your opinion, what are the most valuable skills and experiences that your generation brings to today's workplace? What things will other generations be able to learn from you?
I think that our generation brought forth several things. One is to save your money, take care of things. We learned a lot of things when I was a child. One was, and again, we're going to go back to World War II, is that we had victory gardens, but now I see people are doing gardening now, which is really exciting to see. We saved rubber bands and made big balls out of them, and we saved bottles and cans, and gosh, guess what? We're doing that again. We learn to use our time to help others. Many times the elementary school children needed to knit. Boys were knitting scarves for our soldiers, and those are things that you will never forget, even though you were a young child at that time. We had to save money. We had to put money into savings bonds. Every week we had to go to school and buy savings bonds. And I think lastly is that we learned that you can't have everything. Like now everybody has everything, and I have to agree, I have everything now too. But they used to ration butter. They rationed meat. You had ration stamps. You didn't have the food that you have on your tables now. So I think from all of this, I see people now doing a lot of things that we did during that generation.
And so do you think there's something that your generation can teach younger generations with regards to saving or rationing or that type of thing? Is there a way to share that? It seems to be, again, as you said, it's a recurring experience. It's happening again. Everything goes through cycles, right? But is there something that your generation could talk with, the millennials about, for instance?
Well, at my age, I'm sure there's people here who are grandmothers and grandfathers. And, we all try to do for our grandchildren probably what we haven't done for our kids. We have to be a little bit careful about that. And what we have to do is to let them learn what it is to make money and to save money, and that you can't just keep spending the money that keeps coming to you. I think it's a really important thing that we as grandparents do that. And as far as saving from our generation, I think most of the people in my generation have saved, and most of them are doing relatively well, although there's a lot of seniors that don't have anything, but most of the seniors are those who have saved. And so you have to look at that from that standpoint.
Okay, Tam, it's your turn. So a little bit of research. Research has shown that your generation, our generation, I'm also one of those, tends to be the most team-oriented members of our generation, and that members of the generation have a very whatever-it-takes attitude, often working evenings and on the weekend. So has this caused any conflicts with other generations who didn't share that value?
I certainly have seen it in my work. It's, the people my generation have always seemed to be the one who takes charge, get things done, works through the weekends, works however long it takes. I've worked many times 80 hours per week in order to make things work. Where you simply get up and you work for 7 in the morning and you go home at 11 o'clock at night, get some, eat at your desk, lunch and dinner, and then go home again because that's what it took. And I'm a little bit frustrated sometimes with people who, of course I want the people who work for me to do the same thing, but they're happy to go at 5 o'clock and I can't ask them to stay any longer than that. But more than that, I think my generation, the big thing that we've seen more than I think any others is this huge change in technology that's occurred over the years. Because, you know, when we were young, my father, you know, I had 3 brothers, and my father bought the first TV in our neighborhood because that was the only way he figured he'd be able to get a babysitter for us. So we saw, you know, we saw touch-tone phones, and then you know, when I started working with computers in 1967, but those were programmed with batch cards where you type in, you know, little holes on a card and make 1,000 cards for a simple program that you could do in BASIC on a you know, 4 lines now. And if you got one hole wrong, everything came back wrong. You'd have to do it all over again. But then I saw, you know, before I finished, you know, before I left college at Boston, we had CRT, you know, or actually we had IBM Selectric computers, typewriters that actually were connected to your computer. You could do your program yourself. Then at the University of Minnesota, we actually had the internet. It was the basis of the Gopher system there. But far beyond that, I mean, look what technology has done. Not only that, but in the workplace. I mean, for me, you know, I grew up, you know, and with single tasks. You know, if I wanted to read a book, I would read a book, and there wouldn't be anything else to impinge on. If I wanted to go and do my job, I would spend 8 hours at my job, and maybe I'd take a phone call during the day. There were, you know, and once a week we'd go to a meeting, and it'd be 15 minutes, and we'd all decide where we're going to go from there. But it was a single track, and it really allowed you to concentrate on the things you were doing. But now, I see that, you know, I feel sorry for the people that are in this generation, because not only do you have to do your job, you have to handle the emails that you have coming in, you have to handle the texts that are coming in, you have to handle the instant messages that are coming in, as well as the meetings that people are asking you to do, and all the people that are asking you questions. So in order to do your job, you have to do 2 or 3 things at once. And I'm not able to do it, you know, and I'm glad I'm at the age where I don't have to go back and relearn how to multitask. But at the same time, when I take on a task, nothing else impinges on it. So I have great concentration in what I do, and I wonder whether you're able to do that, you know, with being asked to do that many things at the same time.
Great comments, great comments. Question for you. Studies have shown that your generation is very self-reliant, evidently because your children are baby boomers who were busy working 80 hours a week and didn't have the time to make sure that you were all well cared for. So how do you think the world would affect the way this would affect the way managers from other generations should handle employees, Gen X employees? Any examples you'd like to share?
Yeah, you're exactly right, because my generation is kind of had that latchkey kid. You know, everyone had literally, some kids would come home literally with a key around their neck, and they'd let themselves in after school, stay at home until their parents got home, make them dinner. And we were learned to be self-reliant, and that kind of carried into the workforce. And then also with technology coming in and being, you know, my friend had the first Apple computer, first little Macintosh, I remember the little box in 1984, and it was awesome. And we did our reports on it, and it was awesome. And, you know, being self-reliant, that also meant we could do all the technology, as you mentioned, Tim, that it helps us be more efficient in the workforce as well. And so, honestly, to manage my generation, I think a lot of us are like, okay, tell us what it is, leave us alone, let us do it, we'll take care of it, we'll get back to you, and if we have any questions along the way, I'll let you know, but just kind of leave me be, and I'll take care of it. You told me my task, bye-bye. And I have no micromanaging, and I have some great examples of, I was working with a former boss a few years ago, and I started with a lot of the people I'd worked with previously as my supervisors let me do that. They knew my abilities and they trusted me. They let me go with some big projects, and I would check in with them during our, you know, check-in points, and if there's any issues, I'd immediately raise it, and they knew I could handle it. And then this person came along and became my boss, and she was I need a PowerPoint, I need you to do this, and the person was literally from me to Tim away, and I'm not gonna do a PowerPoint to go talk to this person, I'm gonna walk in their office. I'm like, we have that relationship, and they were very micromanaging, and I actually told her, that relationship started in August, and by the end of the year when I had my review, I actually told her, I said, you know, I really had to take a step back and realize that your micromanaging me really wasn't a reflection of me and my abilities, but your comfort, being comfortable with what's going on, because she liked to micromanage and know what was going on at that level, because she didn't have that trust, and that was her. And I said, I really had to take a step back. She goes, oh, I'm so glad you said that, because I was feeling the same way. I'm like, I think we're over it. I think, let me go on my way. But it was really tough going there for the first couple months. So I think that was, we learned to be self-reliant. We take the projects go and don't micromanage.
So Michelle, I can tell that you're a superwoman. So I have a question for you. So what happens when you're, let's say, a baby boomer manager and you're managing a millennial and a Gen X, I'm sorry, and you've let them go because that's what they're comfortable with. You've given them the task and they go forward, but the first meeting that comes back, they're off track, way off track, in the wrong town. What do you do?
Well, that's, I think, any relationship between a manager and no matter what generation is, to be a good manager, you have to know the person that you're managing. It doesn't matter really what generation. If that's kind of how you start out with a project and say, okay, go do your thing, and you have that first touch point and it's way off track, then you adjust your management style to say, I've done that in the past where I had certain people and they, I actually had project people underneath me, and they were different generations, and I let them go do a task and they came back and that was exactly what happened. I'm like, okay, so then we came up with a plan of how to get back on track. They reported back into me a little sooner than normal, and then we got the project back on task. And if they were still struggling with it, we looked into how I could possibly help them along the way, either me being their manager. You just have to kind of adjust based on what's happening in the situation and the person versus the generation. So it might start that way, but it might not end that way.
Got it. Good. Thank you. Okay, Spencer, your turn. Being the youngest generation in the workplace, what kind of challenges do you face?
Great question. I have to preface it by saying I'm obviously very fortunate to have a job, straight out of college, first job I applied for. But specifically in my industry, it definitely comes with many challenges. I'm in the financial industry, and my job basically is to take people's hard-earned dollars, dollars that people have worked for every single day of their life to save for retirement, and take that money and invest it and try to hopefully make them more. So being at this age and this stage of my career, the biggest challenge would be gaining the trust, I would have to say. Showing them confidence, showing that I am the best person for the job, that I can be trusted, I can be called upon, and I can do what's right for their specific situation and their specific need. It's very often something I come across where I won't even get the chance to prove myself. Just they'll say, you don't have enough experience, you're 22 years old, there's no way I'm going to give you my money. And in some regards, you can't blame them off first impression. And that's definitely, trust, confidence, it's real simple.
Okay, so I guess when you tell them you're already a millionaire, that helps out a lot, right? There's a lot more trust in you then. Tell me a little bit about the job market as a brand new graduate and brand new job. And as you said, you feel lucky. I have a niece who's been graduated about 1.5 years. She's a graphic artist up in New England, and she was she had half a academic scholarship and half for sports. She was a softball pitcher. And she is still out there doing part-time jobs, teaching pitching and softball and a little bit of graphic arts and, struggling. So tell us about the job market for a brand new graduate.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first word that comes to my mind would be intimidating. Definitely I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people in the situation of just graduating, their first impression is, oh, the economy, it's really tough to get a job. Maybe I'll just take a couple months off and relax and then I'll get into it. I think you just got to go into it. You got to be confident. You got to apply, where you're comfortable and put yourself out there. I think that's the hardest thing to do. I couldn't have said I'm definitely gonna get my first job at Merrill Lynch. I'm going to be the best financial advisor. You got to apply different places. You got to trust yourself. You got to trust your resume, what you've built, what you've done in school, and put yourself out there. And I think, a big stigma is that it's very intimidating and very difficult to get a job when it definitely is, and that's no excuse. But you definitely just need to go out there and get your resume out there and get your name out there as much as possible.
Tim and Michelle, for both of you, do you believe that your generation, Boomers and Gen X, have a particular leadership style? And what are the benefits and shortfalls of that style?
Well, to kind of base it, to go off of what I had said before, you know, we're kind of more self-reliant, task-oriented. Sometimes that can be our leadership style as well, where we're very direct and say, okay, this is what I expect you to do, and I kind of, just want you to go do it. And that's not, of course, everybody around you is going to have that capability. And I think that what I've found is different people do different things, of course, things different ways. And one of the kind of stereotypes is for millennials is they want to have that constant feedback and bounce back, and they're more apt to work in a more engaging environment versus I'm going to go in my cube or in my office and just be doing my task and come up and say, okay, this is where I'm at, is that good? And get some feedback. So that leadership style I tend to see in my generation is more, okay, we're going to have this task, this is how we're going to do it, let's get it done, and end of story kind of thing. So it's very more direct from what I've seen, and it's definitely in my work environment as well. Now, of course, and to your point, that does have positives and negatives. I mean, it does get a lot of stuff done if you have those types of people that can accommodate that style. But at the same time, to your follow-up question before, it could possibly bite you in the backside, because some people might not be able to kind of go with that flow and might need a little more engagement or a little more direction, or they might struggle to do things on their own. They might want the feedback or team meetings or other things to be productive.
So tell me how your generation handles workplace conflict.
It's very, I think from what I've seen and people around in where I work, the conflict, that's almost a personality thing of where a lot of people tend to avoid it, and a lot of people will just kind of put their head down and not want to raise any issues and kind of grumble under their breath. But those are also the people that are probably going to be that 80-20 rule. They're going to take up most of their manager's time and trying to fix, and maybe sometimes they're just honestly not worth it. The time and energy it would take versus it might just not be the mix for them. But other times, conflict, there are people, I work with some great teams. I've been very fortunate in a large company to where all my team members, if we do have a conflict, we usually can just hash it out and we agree to disagree, and it's all left on the table. It's professional. We just put it out there. And there's been times when actually somebody called me afterwards and we were both very opinionated and we were both stating our case, and I didn't think anything of it, she didn't think anything of it, but people actually contacted her after and said, "Are you guys okay?" And she called me, she goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, did you take it that way?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." She goes, I said, "Did you?" She's like, "No." And I'm like, so on the phone we were very passionate and going back and forth and trying to resolve the conflict of the situation, not between each other, and people thought we were just
At each other's
yeah, so I'm like, no, we were fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tim?
As I came up through the working world, the one thing that I do think that was most in my generation was the impact of our generation of ageism, sexism, and racism. And it impacted every part of what we did and how we saw the world. And there were those of us that fought it and those of us that didn't, and simply accepted it. And my wife and I, when we started our business, she'd been a vice president of a bank, and she worked her way up. When in a period when women weren't accepted to be anything more than a teller. And she simply demanded to get equal pay, equal opportunities, and as a result, went into the management program and was successful at that. And I think once we started in business, I can't talk about what it's like to be in a job because it's been so long since I've had a real job. If I ever did have a real job, but what we've tried to do in our business is to take all the things of all the bad things we saw in the managers that we had and try to remove those and be better managers, and to take the standpoint of give people the freedom to make decisions for themselves. And our rule at work is if you have a problem, it's your job to fix it or hide it. Either one works for us. If you can hide it successfully, that works too. But the point is that give people the opportunity. Don't micromanage them. Hire people that are good, who are smart, who haven't had the opportunities that they might have had elsewhere. Pay them more than they expect, and they will work hard for you. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay. So, Peg, quickly, over the years, what major changes have you seen in how people communicate at work?
Oh, wow. It's very different. We used to have walking rounds, and we used to talk to people, and I would go from one office to the other and tell people what was going on, or if I needed something, I could just walk in there. You don't do that anymore. It really is email, and if it isn't the email, it's the beeper that's going off like every 2 seconds, and then the phone is ringing the other few seconds, and then people are coming in and wanting to meet with you, and it is like mind-boggling to me. It's very difficult, I think. I feel sorry for them when I see that they have 100 emails on their computer and they haven't gotten to any of them yet. When somebody really wants to have something taken care of, it seems to me to be so much easier to go talk to that person. And I kind of still do that. I mean, I do work a couple of days a week, and I still kind of go, and I seem to get a little bit more than other people do because they don't know that the email is telling them that they need something. So I think there's been a very big difference in how people communicate.
So, Spencer, what's your preferred method of communication at work?
With coworkers, it's definitely email. There's a fine line in our industry between going over to talk to somebody just to talk to somebody, or going over to talk to somebody to actually ask a question. So in our office, it's most specifically email just because it's the quickest, most efficient way in our eyes of communication. With clients, though, it's a completely different answer. It definitely depends on the situation and who the client is. You just have to profile it and assess the situation. Some clients are just going to like to be texted, some are going to like to be called. Some will want to meet you at the local Starbucks and have a cup of coffee and spend an hour or two with you because you're really the only contact they have all day. Some just don't want to hear from you at all. Maybe once a quarter, once half a year. So it is completely different, and you have to read the situation. You have to adapt and adjust and see how they like to be treated. Just as a quick example, if I'm pegging a client and I'm profiling and I'm prospecting and he's going out there like, oh, what the F is up with the market today? Oh, I can't believe it. He's probably going to be somebody that wants just a quick call, a quick text, be updated quick. He's got stuff to do. He's up on his game. He's sharp. If it's somebody that is generally more concerned, wants a little bit more time, you'll definitely pitch maybe a lunch meeting, a dinner, a nice cup of coffee, and just have a more casual, slow conversation with them.
Michelle, I got a question for you. Tell me what the motivators are for people in your generation. What drives you? If I were your manager and motivating you, besides giving you the task and leaving you alone, what else would I do?
It actually would probably be freedoms and flexibility, because we kind of are becoming known as the sandwich generation, where we're taking care of some parents on one end, we're also taking care of our kids on the other. And I'm in that situation exactly as I just described it. So it becomes, I need that flexibility, and I need the freedoms to be able to go do my job, be efficient, take care of the business while I'm there, and then go and have that flexibility to go to a doctor's appointment, or go figure out what I need to do, especially during work hours, potentially during the day. I think that kind of just goes around with whoever you manage. They have different motivators, and as a manager and managing 11 different people at one time or another, I actually used a book called How Full Is Your Bucket? And they have a great little just one-pager of questions, and I was a brand new manager to this group, so I literally sat down with each of them and asked them the questions, and it made me realize, what drives them? Because some people want recognition and title, And I could never give that to them, and they'll never be happy. Otherwise, they wanted money, and I can probably work with that a little better. And there's other people who want the recognition, just, great job, and keep them going. And others don't want the recognition in front of a larger group, just from you, or just in front of our immediate group, versus if you did that in front of a room full like this, they would just shrivel up and die. So just whatever motivates each one person is something you should kind of do as a manager as well.
Just a headline, Employee Benefits Research Institute, which is sort of the think tank for what are the most important employee benefits these days, would tell you that workplace flexibility is the #1 for every generation. So it doesn't matter if you want to take an afternoon off to go surfing, or you're caring for an aging parent, or whatever the case may be. And I'm guessing that's why you're the entrepreneur that you are, Tim, because it gives you the opportunity to be flexible. Yeah. First of all, can we please have a big round of applause for our panelists tonight? Really articulate and eloquent. Thank you. I'd also, at this point, like to introduce our Reconnection event coordinators, who have done, I think, a tremendous job this evening. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mary Jo Shane, Brandon Norton, and Susan Wood. And with that, give us your beauty queen wave. There you go. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, Mary Jo, I'll leave it to you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so thank you, Andrea. Just a couple of things before we finish up. On your way out, we have a wonderful tips sheet for working with across generations. So do make sure you pick one of those up. It also has our School of Management website. And tomorrow, beginning tomorrow, we're going to be posting a lot more information. So this might help you. See? So this should be really great for a lot of you who aren't sure about, how exactly can we best work with people of different generations. So we do have that for you on your way out. Couple of quick, again, thank yous. Again, thank you so much for our sponsors, the California Strawberry Commission, the Dolce Foundation, and of course, University Village. Thank you so much, and Sharon and Christy, thank you.